Good evening. This is Chef Sinead, and we are going over week 3 in BK 141. Guys, we're halfway through already. I can't believe it. It's crazy. I want to go over a couple things as we're at our half point first, and then we'll go ahead and do a recap of week 2 so that we can, talk about how tempering chocolate went for you all. The first thing that I want to go over, I just want to just a refresh on my availability, because I want to make sure that you guys are reaching out to me and you're able to get all your questions answered as you're reaching out. So I want to make sure that you are touching base with me in those hours. That way, as soon as as soon as you reach out, I'm reaching back out to you. If you give me a call and for whatever reason, I might be on the phone with another student or something, just leave your name and your class in your voicemail, because if you call and then you don't say, hey, chef, this is so-and-so, I don't know who I'm calling back. I will call back, but I'll be calling back blindly. So Mondays and Thursdays, Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. So all my hours are there, and it's always on the class page right on the side there, so you always know when you can reach me. So today, a couple things I want to go over. That externship. Do any of you know so far? Are you doing your externship? Do you know where you're doing your externship? Any thoughts?
I'm looking for it still. So.
You're looking still? Okay,
Yes.
that's good. I'm glad that you're looking now, because you guys have the one more class after this, and then it's externship. So if you are unsure or still, have questions, reach out to career services. So here's a little map. And it breaks it kind of down, get this out of your way. It breaks it down to kind of, what area you live in. These are the career service reps here. Annette, Stella, Virginia, they're all really, really awesome. These are the pastry reps. I have their phone numbers here for you because it's kind of a little bit small over there. But reach out to them, touch base with them, and they have a lot of good ideas to bounce off of you, a lot of good plans. So, if you're struggling, if you're maybe living in a smaller area where you feel like maybe you can't find somewhere, touch base with whoever is the rep for the area you live in, and they'll help kind of guide you and give you some ideas of what to look for and where to look for. And they just have a lot of good resources. So definitely use them. I remember when I did my externship, I went to apply to a place, and I knew that I probably didn't have, the requirements for it yet, but I was like, you know what? I really want to get practice with interviewing for these types of positions. And, you never know. I know how to follow a recipe. I know how to bake. Maybe I didn't at that point have any experience with industry equipment, but you learn that kind of stuff. So I went for it anyway, and I got turned down, but he reached out to a resort right down the road. It was a yacht club that I applied to, and he reached out to the resort down the road. He was friends with the executive chef there. He's like, hey, I think they need someone in their pastry. You're not quite ready for this yet, but let me reach out over here and see what I can do. And that next day I went for an interview there, and I met with the exec, I met with the pastry chef, and they hired me on the spot. So don't feel like, oh, I can't get that job, I'm not gonna bother going for it. Because it's really good experience, and you never know what could happen from there. Let's see, so Carmen, you've got an email about the sites that you've been looking about and who responded about it. Okay, so good. So you're hearing things back. That's really awesome. I'm glad to hear that. Sometimes that waiting game, it can get a little bit nerve-wracking, but don't hesitate. Kind of if you kind of try to get a job somewhere a week down the road, touch base. Hey, I submitted my my resume to you guys last week. I just wanted to check on the status of that. Don't be afraid to call them. So Diane's waiting. You're waiting on your wrist, Diane. To see if you have to take a leave of absence. Okay, It'll definitely, just keep it in the back of your mind. That way, if something like that does happen and you do have to take that leave of absence, at least down the road, when it does come time for the externship, you kind of already have that stuff in the back of your mind. Monique, you are at a local bakery, started January 7th. Yay, good for you. That's awesome. That first job that I got, I worked it all the way through school and stayed there even after. When you kind of find a spot that you like, it clicks, and you can stay there. It's nice to be in school and work at the same time, so that everything you're learning in school, you're able to kind of get that on the job training, like side by side. It's really, really awesome. Let's see. Sheena, looking around to figure out where I want to put down to apply. You did your resume portfolio to Stella. Perfect. So yeah, career services will look at your resume, maybe give you pointers, see, if there's different words, different verbiage that you could be using in your resume that can make it stronger. That's going to, that employer is then going to want to look at you more. One-sheeters love one-sheet resumes. You have to think about like their time, right? If you have like a 3-page resume, they're not going to look through it. Give them a 1-pager and they'll be happy with that. So I'm really glad to see that you guys are definitely taking steps in the right direction with externship. So let's talk about week 2. We're getting our hands dirty with tempering. How are we feeling about it? Anybody want to go over kind of their experience? I really want to have a kind of a tempering Q&A, because we're going to be tempering again this week. It's definitely something that, it takes time. It definitely takes time. That's why we dedicate 2 weeks to it. So now that you've had an experience with tempering, I really want to hear questions and just kind of bounce off of each other for a little bit, as before we head into week 3. So shoot them at me. This is your guys. You guys are on the floor now. What are we going to talk about with tempering? Messy, Monique. Yes, it is messy in the beginning. I promise you it won't always be. Once you get a nice workflow, once you get comfortable with it, once you know exactly kind of what you're doing and you find that flow, the mess will begin to reduce, I promise. But yeah, just, warm soapy water is going to help clean your counters. If your tempered chocolate gets hard on your countertop and you have a torch, just hit it with your torch. It will melt it, and then you can wipe it off with some nice warm soapy water. Don't wash your whites in hot. Don't throw it straight into hot water, because it will set that stain in. You want to immediately get some, I use a piece of ice even, and just like dishwater, because the dish detergent will break down the fat in the cocoa butter, and just kind of rub it out, or like blot it out. Really, you don't want to rub it out. You don't want to rub it into your fibers. And then allow that to set, allow that to just kind of like, do its thing, and then throw it in the washing machine. You never want to throw it straight into heat, because heat will set in a stain quicker than you know. Wendy, don't know why you're set so fast. Setting fast is good. If your chocolate is taking a really long time to set, that means it's not tempered properly. So remember, we're looking for that set, shine, snap, or that strength, shine, and snap. So when it's setting, it should be setting within that 3 to 5 minute window, right? That's what we were talking about last week. So it should be setting in that time frame. And then it should set really firm. So if you're working in a cooler environment, you guys are so lucky that you're tempering chocolate, that you have this class at this time of year, because the weather is gorgeous for most places. Monique, I know you're in Hawaii, so you're dealing with that humidity no matter what. But this time of year, it's cooled down. You're not trying to fight against like really high heat. It was terrible. I bet it was, Monique. I'm in Florida, so I feel your pain. Work with the fridge, in and out the fridge. But this time of year, generally speaking, is really nice to temper chocolate, especially as you're kind of getting into it, because you're not fighting so hard against the temperature. But if your ambient temperature in your room and whatnot is kind of cooler, your chocolate's going to cool down quicker. Once you have it to the working temperature, keep it on like a towel. That will help it not to cool down as fast, because that towel is going to kind of insulate it. And then the reverse of that, if your chocolate is just taking a long time to cool down, What we use is like a cake ring, or like, you know, just the ring of a springform pan, and you can set your bowl on top of that. That way the air is circulating underneath, and that's really helpful to kind of get that cooling process going. Wendy had that thermometer spatula. Those are fantastic. Another thing you can do, I know it's kind of janky, but you can tape your thermometer to your spatula. That way you're, you know, you can just use your one hand and stir it, and it'll keep track of your temperature as you're stirring with your spatula. It's a little tricky to fandangle, but you get used to it. You figure it out. What else? So the cornet bags, all right, so the chocolate's popping out the top. Fill it a little less, and then when you know the top is open, kind of fold in one corner, then the other corner, and then fold it down. That way you've really got a tight tuck. That way it's not, you know, bursting all out of the top and everything. But you're probably pretty much filling it like a quarter of the way, no more than half. Just because, yes, it will kind of just explode out the back.
Hi, Chef.
Questions? Yeah, go ahead.
So the problem that I had with the whole tempering thing was like the dance of it being workable. And then, you know, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes later, it was below 88, and then having to do that dance on with the bain marie and trying to keep the water out, and I was just freaking out, and it was like, it took so long for me to do it. It was like something that should have taken maybe 40 minutes, really took me almost 4 hours with doing the bags, with piping everything out, with not my tempering not coming out the first time. It was really hard. It was really, really, really difficult for me.
No, I understand that completely and entirely. It is a very lengthy process. And, you know, kind of that people dedicate years of their life, their entire careers, their entire lives to perfecting chocolate, to perfecting tempering it, working with it. All that I can say is be patient with yourself, because your final product came out as it should. You know, you had it tempered, it was shiny, it was, you know, glossy, it had that snap. So what that shows you is that you're definitely capable of it. You've got it, you know. It's just about getting comfortable with the process and learning how to adapt to your environment. Like you said, it kept kind of like dropping under that working temperature. So you have to bounce back, you know, get it back up to that working temperature. As long as it's not falling below that where that crystallization point where we want to, you know, drop it all the way down to the cooling, as long that 84, as long as it hasn't gone below that, you can kind of, you have a little bit of wiggle room. So that like that 88 that we're looking for, or, you know, the upper 80s that we're looking for to work with it, it's because it has a nice like viscosity. It has a nice fluidity at that point. Now, if it starts to cool a little bit, if you can feel that it's getting thick and you can't do anything with it at that point, it's not, you know, you're not able to dip it, then that's, you know, pop it on your bain marie, kind of get it back to that working temperature. So there's a very small window where you can allow it to cool. It doesn't have to stay exact steady. The better, you know, the more steady it is, the better, obviously. But if it kind of drops a little bit below, but it's still workable, then, you know, you have like a couple more tries where you can get, you know, maybe dip a couple more truffles and then pop it back on your bain marie. But we're also tempering in a home environment. You know, you don't have all of that equipment that if you're working in a chocolate shop, there's going to be a warmer keeping your chocolate at the exact temperature, and you don't have to worry about, you know, it dropping down too far or getting too hot, you know what I mean? So if this is a path that you want to take and you get into a chocolate shop, trust me, like those kind of frustrations of working like in a smaller kitchen, working in a home kitchen, working, you know, in a little kitchen, those kind of go out the door when you start working in an actual chocolate shop, because all those tools take care of all those frustrations, where you can just focus on making like delicious, gorgeous, you know, ganache and fillings and you know, focus on actual like enrobing and molding and everything like that. So it does become easier. I promise you that. Let's see, Sheena said she was a little scared of reheating it too much because of the thermometer. Yeah, your thermometer was a little off, so you were worried about that. So it ended up being a bit cooler than it should be. The cool thing, the more you work with it, you're gonna start to like see things visually. You're gonna say, oh, you know, how fluid this is too hot. Like you already know it without pulling your thermometer out. Or as it starts to cool, if it gets really like too pasty, you know that it's cooled down far too much. So you'll start, you know, to get these cues outside of just looking at the thermometer. That's why I always say, you know, it's not just the temperature that you're focused on, it's so many other variables, which that's what them, you know, kind of intimidates people when it comes to chocolates, because there's a lot going on and it's very precise work. Francine, the beginning of your love of chocolate making. Oh, I love it. That makes me so happy. I love chocolate as well. You know, this is one thing, like, I just think it's really cool. I love the science behind it. I'm a big geek. Like, I adore everything that is chocolate. You're welcome, Monique. I hope that helped. Any other questions? Do we want to go over any more tempering stuff? Because like I said, you guys are tempering again for week 3. Do we want to discuss anything else of tempering before we head into talking about truffles? All right, we'll ask questions as we go through, and you guys already know how to reach me. So this week, week 3, we're going to be making truffles. We're going to be working with ganache. So who knows what goes into a ganache? Who can tell me? Dairy. What types of dairy?
Half chocolate, half cream, or a 1-to-1 ratio.
Yep, you can definitely do the 1-to-1. That's what we're going to be working with this week. It makes a really nice consistency for rolled truffles, for cut truffles as well. Heavy cream, cream and chocolate. Yeah, so the different fats that you can use, the most common with a ganache is going to be your heavy cream, half and half. Some people will use milk, but then you're going to kind of add in a little bit of butter as well to make sure that, you know, you've still got that nice creamy fat content going on. 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream. So the 2-to-1 with a dark chocolate is going to yield a much more soft texture, or sorry, a much more firm texture if you're doing like 2 parts chocolate to 1 part cream. With the truffles, we want to keep them a little softer, so we do the 1-to-1. You can make a 2-to-1 truffle for sure. With white chocolate or with white couverture, because right, we can't call white chocolate because there's no cocoa solids. But with white, if you guys have that one, if you're working with white, do a 2-to-1 chocolate to cream, just because it sets a lot softer, because it doesn't have the milk, the cocoa solids in there to firm it up. You know, it's high in milk solids, it's high in cocoa butter, sugar. So do your 2-to-1 chocolate to cream if you're using white chocolate. Coconut milk, yep, you can use coconut milk for your ganache, but this week we're going to be working with heavy cream. So let's go ahead and take a look at the formula for this week. All right, so we already know that we're just using chocolate and cream. We're going to do 340 grams of chocolate. You want to chop it up just to make sure that it's easily meltable. And then 340 grams of heavy cream. All right, so what you're going to be doing to make your ganache is you're going to, some people will do it different ways. Some people will melt the chocolate and then add the cream. You don't have to worry about that. Heat up your cream, and then you're going to pour that into your chocolate. I just like to let it rest. I just like to let it sit, let it melt down a little bit. And then because we want to make an emulsification, we want to emulsify it because we need to combine the fat and water, right? So we need to combine that together. We need to combine our cream and our chocolate. So instead of just kind of going in and mixing all over the place, Have you guys ever made like a mayonnaise? Anybody in here make mayonnaise? Well, with how long do we let it sit? Just until you kind of start to see the chocolate melting. I mean, like 5 minutes, not long, nothing long. You can even cover the bowl with like a piece of plastic wrap, and then it will kind of like start, you know, steaming in there. Keep the heat in there, and that will help it to continue to melt. And then when you start to stir, because you want to introduce that liquid into the chocolate slowly, you don't want to just kind of have at it. So you kind of just start in the center, and then just in a circular motion, just kind of start stirring it in the middle, and then slowly the cream and the chocolate are going to start to emulsify. They're going to start to come together. And so you just want to keep stirring it until you can start working it out once you see in the middle that it's starting to come together. And then you just keep stirring it out, kind of like go around the bowl and really, you know, mix it in together. But the goal is just basically you want to make sure that your chocolate and your cream are really well combined. So does that make sense for everybody, how we're going to put that chocolate or put that ganache together? Cool beans. At that point, you can flavor your ganache. So our formula says 10 grams of vanilla extract. So we're looking at about 2 teaspoons there. I am okay with you guys doing other flavors. That's fine with me, but what I want is just a plain ganache, in a sense that like we're not doing all kind of extra fillings and stuff for these. So I only want you guys making ganache this week. I don't want like salted caramel fillings or anything like that, because I really want to see your ganache this week. But I'm fine with like if you want to swap out that vanilla extract for say like an orange extract or something like that, that's perfectly fine. You can also, if you have like any liqueurs, I'm okay with you swapping out that vanilla extract for a liqueur, like a Grand Marnier, peppermint. Yes, Francine, I am a sucker for peppermint. Peppermint mocha season. But yes, you can definitely use peppermint extract. I wouldn't do maybe the 10 grams on that one. I might fall back just a little bit, maybe cut that in half, because peppermint's really strong. Coconut. So are you using a coconut extract, Eva? Yes, yeah, you can use coconut, any flavor you want, perfectly fine. Any of those extracts, any of those liqueurs, I am all right with. I just don't want all those extra fancy fillings when it comes to putting your truffle together. Just stick with ganache is all. But yeah, so we are going to be enrobing or making molded chocolate this week. So you know how like sometimes you'll see truffles and it's been rolled and then they put it in a cocoa powder. So that's a very traditional truffle. Truffles are named truffles because they look like the truffles that you find under the ground, the little black mushroom truffles. That's why that's how they got their name. But I don't want you to do that this week. I would like to see you working with tempered chocolate. So I will show you a couple different ways how you can dip your truffles. And then I also want to go over molded chocolates with you. There's not a video on the class page for that one, but I have one to show you. The difference between extract and essence. Does it matter which we use to infuse the chocolate? It does not matter which one. Extracts are typically going to be pure. It's going to be like literally extracted, taken out of the actual, you know, spice or whatever that it is that's using with like an alcohol base. Essences are typically going to be manufactured. They're typically not going to be like a pure, like from the actual, you know, beans and stuff like that, from the vanilla bean. And it does not matter, but like I said, extracts are just, they're gonna have a nicer flavor to them because they are, you know, you typically coming from pure. And that's another thing. Try to use pure vanilla extract whenever you can. Try to stay away from the imitation. You know, budget-wise, if that's what you can afford to grab, then that's fine, so be it. But it's always nice to work with the pure extract. But yeah, I want you guys to be dipping your truffles, not rolling them in the cocoa powder. So let me pull up the video. It's on the class page, but I just kind of want to bring it up because I want to show you. I want to show you how they show it in the video and then give you guys another option of how you can get your truffles prepared. I'm not worried about the music. So see here, that's where she is rolling it in the cocoa powder. But let me fast forward it up to here. All right, so see how she has a block of ganache. So what she's done here is once her ganache is prepared, you just kind of line a pan or whatever you might have with some wrap and then pour your ganache in there and allow it to set. You want to keep ganache at room temperature because if it starts to get too firm, it changes the texture and it's just not as enjoyable, it's not as palatable. So you want to allow it to set at room temperature. Now, you know, if you're kind of trying to move a little bit quicker through the process, you can go in and out of the fridge with your ganache. Once you're putting it in a pan, you can put it in the fridge for a little while and then pull it back out when you start to dip it, because if you're dipping that really, really cold ganache into the chocolate, it's gonna start to firm up too quickly. So you wanna work with it from room temperature. And then, so this is what she's doing here. She is enrobing those little squares of ganache. She's taken the ganache and she's put it on a dipping fork, and then you dip it right into that chocolate. And then once you dip it in the chocolate, you can pull it out, give it a tap on the side of your bowl to make sure all excess chocolate has been removed. And then you set it on your parchment and slide it just a little bit to make sure that you don't get a foot. So that's how you're going to do the, pause this real quick. That's how you're gonna do it if you're not like rolling the truffles out, right? So that's just, you've set your ganache, and we'll use what's called guitar in the bake shop, and it's really cool. You just kind of like, it has a bunch of wires on it, and you just pull it down and it cuts everything evenly, so you don't have to worry about messing with a knife. So you have that option. You can do it that way, then you just kind of plunk into the chocolate. And then the other option, so can we use a toothpick for dipping or not this time? You can use a toothpick, but the thing with toothpicks is of course, it's gonna leave a little hole in there. So what you would do is you would stick your toothpick in there, and once you dip it, you set it down, and then you kind of have to like wiggle the toothpick out of it, but you want to make sure that the tempered chocolate seals that hole. So that's the only thing with using the toothpick. If you're using a fork, it's not actually like poking into your ganache, so you don't have to worry about any little holes or cracks or anything like that. I also want to show you how she rolls it. So she's using that same kind of block of ganache, and then, you know, portioning it out, and then she's gonna roll that one. So let's check that portion out as well. And then, like I said, I want to talk about another option to make your truffles. All right, so she's portioning them out again here. These ones, she's going to be rolling it in just the plain, she's using cocoa powder to make sure that she's getting a really smooth ball, and then she's tossing it in the cocoa powder to stay. So these are the ones that I said I want you guys to use tempered chocolate. I don't want just the cocoa powder ones. You can totally make them on your own time, but for me, for your assignment, I want them covered in chocolate. But what I wanted to show you, this piece here, was see how she's portioned them into the squares, and then she rolls it. She's just rolling it in her hand until she rounds it out. And then at that point, you would follow the same process of using the fork, dipping it into your tempered chocolate. You can also coat your rolled ganache in your hands with tempered chocolate. When you're rolling ganache, your hands are hot, right? So glove it, double glove your hands, triple glove your hands if you have to. I used to keep ice water right next to me and put my hands in the ice water because I have hot hands. So I have to ice my hands down so that I'm not melting my my ganache. If it starts to get really spiky as you're rolling it and there's all these tiny spikes, your hands are getting too hot. So you want a really, really smooth surface on the outside. So keep your hands as cool as you can. Working with gloves, A, helps you keep clean, and B, it makes sure that your hands aren't too hot on your ganache. So what you can do instead of how she cut the blocks and everything, this is what I like to do. You can pipe out little Hershey's Kisses. So you get your sheet tray, put some parchment on it, and then you're going to pour your ganache into a bag, right in the bag, right from soft, right from liquid. And then you're going to wait for that to kind of firm up until it's a piping consistency. Once it's firmed up to that piping consistency, you're just gonna go and pipe out like literally like Hershey Kiss size blops, if you will, on your parchment. And then you can allow that to just rest and set and firm up and what we call cure. You want to let your ganache cure. And then I like that just because, like, you know, taking it from a square and having to kind of roll it out, it's a little bit more of a pain than already starting with, like, you know, rounded pieces. So that's why I like that one a little bit more. And then, like I said, once you've allowed that to rest, probably a couple hours, then you can just roll those out and then go straight into your dipping with your chocolate. So do we have questions on the truffles, on your enrobed truffles, how to put those together? You can use dark white milk chocolate again this week. Whatever you had last week, use it again this week, totally fine. All right. So there is not a video on the class page right now for molded chocolates. So I found one. If you guys go on like YouTube and research about Rona and Calabo, they have really good tutorial videos on kind of just, you know, different things about things to make with chocolate, whether it be baked dishes or like actual working with chocolate, like confections and stuff. So they have really cool little short little videos, and that's one that I have up here for you. Carmen, can you top the truffles with sprinkles or coconuts after they're dipped? I want you to show me plain ones and then have at it. You're more than welcome to roll whatever you want. So you show me 3 plain ones. Once you've dipped it, put it on your parchment and let those set plain. If you are rolling it, if you want coating on there, once you've dipped it, have a little, like a bowl or a plate with your sprinkles or nuts or whatever it is that you're using, and you can toss it right into there with that wet chocolate still on it, kind of, you know, just give it a shake, give it a roll around, and then put those onto your parchment and let that set. With the garnish, we're using like a semi-sweet chocolate morsel opposed to couverture. You will still, with the ganache, you will still be using your couverture. You don't have to temper it before making the ganache though. So you can just use it straight, put your hot cream into the chocolate. You don't have to worry about tempering the chocolate first. You know, reach out, like if, you know, it might be to anybody, you know, in the archive world or whatever. If you're having any kind of like budgetary situations where, you know, there's just, hey, I can't get any more of this couverture, this stuff's expensive, then with your ganache, go ahead and use a regular chocolate. But the enrobing part, it has to be your couverture because it needs to be tempered. But the ganache, go ahead and let's save some bucks there. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at this video. Excuse me. I pulled it through the video a little ways because what I want to show you is how she's filling the molds, emptying them out, and then coming back behind and filling it. Now she's doing some other stuff in the video, which you would be doing, you know, in a chocolate shop, in a chocolaterie. So she uses this like little kind of spatula. I like to do it with a ladle. I think it's a little bit cleaner. So you just kind of ladle it in, make sure all the cavities are full, scrape off the top. You can use an offset spatula. It doesn't have to be this guy. You want to work as cleanly as possible. Now what she's doing is wrapping it on the side to make sure she's getting all of those air bubbles out. If you leave air bubbles in, then when you go to unmold the chocolate, they're not gonna have that really smooth exterior. So you gotta make sure that you shake out all those extra air bubbles so that you just, you wanna have that gorgeous finish. Also, the mold that she's using it's a polycarbonate chocolate mold. It gives absolutely gorgeous shine. It is really nice for like the shrinkage of your chocolate, when it kind of pulls away. And if you take care of it properly, it will last you a lifetime. So see there, once she filled it, she whacked on it, got the air bubbles out. She then turned it over and got rid of all that extra chocolate in there. And then you're just left with a really thin, layer or a really thin shell in your mold. Then she's placed it upside down on the parchment so that if there's any extra chocolate in there, it can just drip out instead of falling back in. And she gives it one last scrape for any extra chocolate that did come out. All right, so then once you have those set, then that's when you're gonna come in with your filling. Again, I would like for you to fill it with ganache, not any caramel, none of that fun stuff. This week, I just want you to work with ganache. So the difference with this and a truffle would be, once you put it into your piping bag, you're gonna go ahead and pipe right into the cavities while it's still soft. You can let it firm up a little bit, but do it while it's still soft. So what she's doing right here, she hasn't filled them as of yet. What she's doing, she put it into the refrigerator for just a little bit to make sure that they completely set up before she comes in with the filling. Now, this one doesn't show the filling in that particular video. I just wanted you guys to see like how to fill it with the chocolate. But what you'll do is you just, like I said, you have your piping bag, you go in and you pipe it. You want to leave about 1/4 inch of space because you're going to have to cap it off with the filling. So once you've filled them, allow the filling to completely set. Once you've filled it up, the ganache needs to completely firm up. Then once it's completely firm, which sometimes you can just kind of leave it overnight. Silicone molds will work. They'll work fine. The polycarbonate is just going to give a much nicer shine, and that's what you're going to find in like actual chocolate shops, pastry shops. You're going to find those polycarbonates. But once your ganache is completely set in there, and then you're going to come back over it again with that tempered chocolate, and you're going to fill the tops of those cavities. Give it a scrape with your offset, or whatever spatula that you're using to scrape that off. And then again, you're going to let that set until the chocolate is completely, until that top chocolate is completely set. At this point, if you wanted to use a transfer sheet, you would put that transfer sheet, remember that acetate that has all those pretty like cocoa butter colors? That's when you would lay it on there when the chocolate is still wet. Give it a scrape like with the sheet on there, scrape that to make sure that it comes in contact. And then you're going to, still upside down, you're going to allow that to completely rest before you knock them out. With a mold, wouldn't it be considered a bonbon? Yes, you are correct, Monique. If you are using a mold, it is a bonbon. Bonbons don't only have to have ganache, though. A truffle is specifically going to be ganache. With a bonbon, it could be ganache, liqueur filling, those little like cordial fillings, all the caramels that I know everybody loves. You'll also hear the term bonbon and praline kind of like thrown around. Pralines are, the candied nuts, but when bonbons were created, they got the name of praline back then. So it's kind of just like where you're from in the world. In Belgium, they'll still call them pralines, and that just kind of refers to like any molded chocolate with filling in it, not necessarily nut-based. Gets a little confusing, I know, but yes, you'll kind of hear those terminologies thrown back and forth. What's a cordial filling? So cordial fillings, the like the fondant, the fondant that you'll cover a petit four with, you would use that. You would fill your molded chocolate with that cordial filling, with that confectioner's fondant. Fill it up. But before you do that, you'll sometimes see, that kind of grainy, like sugary shell on the inside. It's because it's been filled with a syrup first. It starts to crystallize. You pour that out, and then you come in with like a liqueur That's how you get that like kind of grainy one. But yeah, you can just fill it with like that fondant, that liquid fondant. Any other questions on the molded chocolate? Oh, so releasing them. So once it's completely set, you should be able to turn it out, and they should easily come out if your chocolate is tempered properly. Another thing that you can do is when you turn it out, you should have a parchment on the table, turn it out and give it a whack on the counter, and then all your chocolates should pop out of there. Maintenance on those molds, just warm water. You don't want to use soap. You just want to let them soak in warm water, and that will help to kind of break down the fat that's in the chocolate. And you can just use like a really clean rag, something that doesn't have a lot of lint on there, because lint is going to be your enemy. Excuse me. So you want to make sure that you're not getting any lint. You don't want to touch the inside with your fingers, because if there's fingerprints there, it will show up on your chocolate. Cotton balls are your friend. So once it's completely dry, you kind of want to buff and shine the inside with a cotton ball. And then I like to wrap it in cling wrap so no dust kind of settles in there. Yeah, that's it on the maintenance of those. So do we have any questions thus far on either truffles or the molded chocolates, the bonbons? I'm excited this week. I need to go and get a thermometer so I can make these with you guys. Cocoa butter colors. If you guys are doing the molds and you want to use cocoa butter colors, this is the type of coloring that you would use with chocolate, because chocolate and water don't like each other. So you'll use a cocoa butter coloring. You can use an airbrush kit. You can paint it with a paintbrush in the cavities. You could do that. I like the splatters. I think the splatters are really pretty. Gosh, anything you can think of, but you'll just want to make sure you're using cocoa butter colors whenever you're working with chocolate. So how are you guys feeling? Lot to go over this week. Any questions? Awesome. It is. I love chocolate. Let's see. I don't think that there's anything else this week. So let's talk about what is due. Let's do this week, guys. All right. So we have a knowledge check. Let me get this out of the way. We've got a knowledge check this week. No discussion forum this week, just a knowledge check and a conversion check. There is a survey I'll show you on the class page. There's a survey, kind of midway survey, where you can just, it's really short. I think it's like 3 questions. It's completely anonymous. And we would love if you would do that survey for us, just so that, you know, we can get an idea of like what's going on, how you're feeling, what you're happy with. You know, it allows us to know areas maybe where some improvement needs to happen, or areas that we're doing really well in. So I'd really appreciate if you would jump in there and do the survey. I'll pull the class page up so you can see where that's at. And then of course your truffle assignment, I'm gonna go over your pictures due for that, either enrobed or molded, either one, whatever you would like to do. I just want to see tempered chocolate on the outside of them. Hold on. All right, so your class survey, if you go to week 3, it's going to be right here, right under week 3, mid-course survey. So if you guys would kindly click on that, like I said, it's just a couple questions. If you would throw that in there for me. So truffles, let's look at those photos. All right, only one, you do not have to do 2. And I will message you again and tell you, you don't have to do 2, because I know you guys are gonna say, do we have to do 2, chef? No, just one of them. You're either going to dip your chocolate truffles. I want to see your self-ID, mise en place, your cream that has been poured over your chopped chocolate, then a lined sheet pan with your ganache, or if you're doing the piped version that I was talking about, where you just pipe it onto the parchment, show me your little drops. Set ganache piped truffles, or even piece of set ganache. So basically, just show it once you've dipped it. whether you did the rolled truffles or whether you used the cut ones. Just show me once you have dipped it, and then show me once they have set, so that I can make sure that that chocolate isn't tempered. I also like to see internals if you just want to cut one open. I know it's not on the required list, but I like to see the internals. If you are doing a molded chocolate, again, you'll have your self-ID, you will have your mise en place, and then you're going to show me the mold with the tempered chocolate coating. So that's once you pour the chocolate in, dump it out, show me that picture there. Then you're going to show me the mold filled with your filling. That way I can make sure it's not too full. And then your finished truffles that have been unmolded. I would like to see the top, bottom, and interior if possible, just so that I can make sure that, you know, you've got a good thin shell, that when you capped them off, that you used enough chocolate to cap them, you know, you didn't put too much filling in there, everything of that sort. That's all I've got for you guys this week. Anybody want to chit chat about anything before we head out of here? Nope. All right. Well, like I said, guys, make sure that you're reaching out in my available hours. That way I can answer all your questions. I love talking about this stuff. I will talk about it with you all day long, trust me. But yeah, I hope you guys have a fantastic evening. Remember, your week 2 assignments are due tonight, 11:59 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then your discussion forums, all of that's due tonight. So make sure you get those done if you have not already. All right. I will see you guys next week, and have fun.